Dad, I can explain the stain. I was just helping Mom with her medication and it spilled. That's what my daughter said when I walked into our living room and found my wife collapsed on the couch, barely conscious, while my daughter stood over her with wet hands and panic in her eyes. The stain on her sleeve was dark, viscous, nothing like the pills my wife had been prescribed. I wanted to believe her explanation. God. I wanted to believe her so badly. But when my wife grabbed my hand with the last of her strength and whispered, "Don't let her give me any more medicine," I finally understood the horrible truth. The person I'd trusted to care for my wife had been killing her all along. I'm 64 years old. I've worked construction for 40 years, raised 3 children, survived a heart attack, and buried both my parents. I thought I'd seen every kind of pain life could throw at me. I was wrong. Because nothing, absolutely nothing prepares you for the moment you realize your own child has been methodically trying to murder your wife. My name is Robert, and this is the story of how I almost lost everything to someone who was supposed to protect our family. This is the story of how evil doesn't always announce itself with screaming or violence. Sometimes it wears a smile, brings groceries, and asks if there's anything else it can do to help. And sometimes, evil leaves a stain. Let me take you back to where this nightmare truly began. Not that Tuesday evening when I finally saw the truth, but 3 months earlier when I made the biggest mistake of my life. I asked my daughter Ashley to move in with us to help care for her mother. It was late August, the kind of humid Pennsylvania evening where the air sits heavy on your chest and makes breathing feel like work. My wife, Catherine, had been diagnosed with early-onset dementia 6 months prior. She was only 61, too young for this disease that steals memories like a thief in the night, taking the most precious things first. Catherine had always been sharp. A high school English teacher for 35 years, she could quote Shakespeare, correct your grammar mid-sentence, and remember the names of students she'd taught decades ago. Watching her struggle to remember what day it was like watching someone slowly disappear while their body remained. I'd taken early retirement to care for her. We had savings, a paid-off house in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, and health insurance that covered most of her treatments. We were managing, but it was hard, so damn hard. That's when Ashley suggested moving back home. "Dad, you look exhausted," she'd said over the phone. "Let me come help. I can work remotely, and you know I've always been good with Mom." Ashley was our middle child, 36 years old, divorced twice, worked in pharmaceutical sales. She'd always been the most attentive of our 3 kids, calling every week, visiting on holidays, sending flowers on birthdays. Her older brother, Thomas, lived in Seattle with his own family. Our youngest, Jennifer, was finishing medical school in Boston. Ashley was the one who was available, the one who offered, the one I trusted. "I don't want to burden you," I'd told her. "Dad, she's my mother." Those words, God, those words sounded so sincere. She moved in the first week of September, bringing her laptop, 2 suitcases, and a smile that I now recognize as the mask predators wear. She took over the guest bedroom, set up a small office, and immediately began organizing Catherine's medication schedule. "You've been doing so much, Dad," she said that first evening, taking the pill organizer from my hands. "Let me handle this. You focus on spending quality time with Mom." I was grateful, relieved, even. The medication schedule had become increasingly complex. Different pills at different times, some with food, some without. Having Ashley manage it felt like a weight lifted from my shoulders. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was not noticing the pattern immediately. For the first 2 weeks after Ashley moved in, Catherine seemed better, more alert. She recognized me every morning, could hold conversations that made sense, even laughed at old jokes. I thought maybe the new medication her neurologist had prescribed was finally working. "See, Dad," Ashley said, watching her mother work on a crossword puzzle. She just needed the right care. But then the bad days started. Catherine would wake up confused, not knowing where she was. She'd ask for her mother, who'd been dead for 15 years. She'd forget she'd eaten breakfast and insist she was starving. Her hands would shake so violently she couldn't hold a coffee cup. "It's the disease progressing," Ashley explained, her voice thick with manufactured sympathy. "The doctor warned us there would be good days and bad days." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She worked in pharmaceuticals. She understood medicine. She was my daughter. Third mistake. I started keeping a journal, something Catherine's neurologist had recommended to track her symptoms. I'd write down what kind of day she had, what she ate, her mood, her clarity. I was looking for patterns that might help us understand the disease better. It took me 3 weeks to notice something strange. Catherine's worst days, the days when she could barely function, when the tremors were so bad she needed help drinking water, when confusion turned her into a stranger, those days always happened when Ashley had been the one to give her morning medication. The good days. Those were the days when Ashley slept in late, or had early morning work calls, or was out running errands. The days when I gave Catherine her pills. I told myself it was a coincidence. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that stress was making me imagine patterns that didn't exist. But the journal didn't lie. Then came the incident with the insulin. I was organizing our bathroom cabinet one afternoon while Ashley was out grocery shopping. We'd accumulated so many medications over the past months. P8 ills for Catherine's dementia, blood pressure medication, vitamins, supplements. I was trying to make sense of it all, throwing away expired bottles, when I found it. A prescription bottle labeled Insulin Humalog. The prescription was in Catherine's name. The date was recent, filled just 2 weeks ago. My hands went cold. Catherine wasn't diabetic. She'd never been diabetic. I checked her medical records. Nothing. No diagnosis. No prescription from her doctor. I called the pharmacy listed on the bottle. They confirmed the prescription had been called in by Dr. Morrison's office, Catherine's neurologist. I called Dr. Morrison's office. They had no record of prescribing insulin. Someone had called it in fraudulently, using the doctor's information. I stood in our bathroom, holding that bottle, my mind racing through possibilities. Maybe it was a pharmacy error. Maybe someone else's prescription got mislabeled. Maybe, "Dad, I'm home. Want to help me unload groceries?" Ashley's voice floated up the stairs, cheerful and light. I slipped the insulin bottle into my pocket and went downstairs, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I watched my daughter unpack groceries, fresh vegetables, whole grain bread, organic chicken. She hummed while she worked, asked about Mom's day, and made jokes about the traffic on Route 28. And I wondered, could the person putting away groceries with such casual normalcy be capable of obtaining fraudulent prescriptions? "Everything okay, Dad?" Ashley asked, catching me staring. "You look pale." "Just tired," I managed. She smiled, that warm, concerned daughter's smile. "Go sit down. I'll make you some tea." I didn't drink the tea. That night, after Ashley went to bed and Catherine was sleeping, I sat at our kitchen table with my laptop and that insulin bottle. I researched what happens when a non-diabetic person is given insulin. Hypoglycemia, dangerously low blood sugar. Symptoms include confusion, tremors, weakness, altered mental state, seizures, if untreated, coma, death. Symptoms that could easily be mistaken for dementia progression. My mouth went dry. I checked Catherine's symptoms against hypoglycemia symptoms. They matched perfectly. I went to our bedroom and watched my wife sleep. Her chest rose and fell peacefully. She looked younger in sleep, like the woman I'd married 42 years ago, the woman who'd walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, the woman who'd held my hand through my father's funeral, the woman who'd taught me how to be patient, how to be kind, how to be better than I was. Someone was trying to take her from me, and I was terrified that someone was sleeping in our guest bedroom. Before I continue with what happened next, I need to ask you something. If this story is already making your heart race, if you're thinking about the people you trust with your loved ones, I need you to do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. These stories aren't just entertainment. They're warnings, lessons, wake-up calls. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you've ever had that feeling in your gut that something was wrong but couldn't prove it. Your engagement helps YouTube share these stories with people who need to hear them, people who might be missing the same warning signs I missed. Now, let me tell you about the hardest decision I ever had to make. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. I hadn't really slept, just laid there in the dark, watching shadows move across the ceiling, my mind churning through possibilities I didn't want to believe. Catherine was still asleep beside me, her breathing steady. I slipped out of bed quietly, grabbed my phone, and went downstairs to the kitchen. I needed proof, real proof. Not just a bottle that might have a reasonable explanation. Not just a pattern that could be a coincidence. I needed to catch her in the act. But how do you surveil your own daughter without her knowing? How do you investigate someone living under your roof, sharing your meals, kissing your cheek goodnight? I called my brother, Dennis, who lived 40 minutes away in Cranberry Township. We weren't particularly close. Different politics, different lifestyles. But he'd been a detective with the Pittsburgh Police Department for 30 years before retiring. If anyone could help me think through this rationally, it was him. "Rob? It's 6 in the morning," Dennis answered, his voice rough with sleep. "I need your help," I said quietly. I think Ashley might be hurting Catherine." Silence on the other end. Then, "I'm coming over. Don't do anything until I get there." He arrived an hour later, dressed in jeans and a Steelers hoodie, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the gas station. We sat in my truck in the driveway so Ashley wouldn't hear us. I told him everything. The insulin. The pattern of good days and bad days. The symptoms that matched hypoglycemia. The prescription that shouldn't exist. Dennis listened without interrupting, his cop face firmly in place. That neutral expression that gave nothing away. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Rob," he said finally, "I need you to understand how serious this is. If you're right, and I'm not saying you are, but if you're right, we're talking about attempted murder, premeditated, calculated attempted murder. I know, but if you're wrong, you're accusing your daughter of trying to kill her own mother based on a medication bottle and a hunch. It's not just a hunch." "I'm not disagreeing with you," Dennis interrupted. "I'm telling you what a defense attorney would say. We need ironclad evidence. We need to see her do it. So what do I do?" Dennis took a long sip of his coffee. "How tech-savvy is Ashley?" "She works remotely. Pretty savvy, I guess. Then obvious cameras are out. She'd spot them." He thought for a moment. "But there are other options. Nanny cams that look like everyday objects. I know a guy who installs security systems. He owes me a favor. Could have something set up by tomorrow." "Tomorrow might be too late," I said, thinking of Catherine upstairs, vulnerable. "Then tonight, you give Catherine her medication yourself. All of it. Don't let Ashley near those pills. What if she notices? Make an excuse. Tell her you want to feel useful. Tell her you appreciate her help, but you miss caring for your wife yourself. Whatever it takes." That evening, when it came time for Catherine's medication, I intercepted Ashley in the kitchen. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, trying to sound casual. "I've been thinking. I appreciate everything you're doing, but I'd like to handle Mom's evening pills. It makes me feel more connected to her care, you know?" Ashley's expression flickered, just for a microsecond, with something I couldn't quite identify. Annoyance? Frustration? Fear? Then her usual warm smile returned. "Of course, Dad. Whatever makes you comfortable." She handed me the pill organizer. "Just make sure she takes the pink one with food. It can upset her stomach otherwise." I nodded, taking the organizer from her hands. Our fingers touched briefly, and I had to suppress a shudder. That night, I watched as Catherine took her medications. Within an hour, she was alert, conversational. She remembered our grandson's name. She asked intelligent questions about a news story on TV. She was herself. The next morning, I insisted on giving her the morning pills too. "Dad, you don't have to do this," Ashley said, a slight edge creeping into her voice. I'm here to help. I know, honey. But it makes me feel better. I hope you understand. Again, that flicker of something in her eyes. But she smiled and backed off. Catherine had another good day. That afternoon, while Ashley was on a work call in her room, Dennis arrived with his contact, a wiry guy in his 50s, named Pete, who carried a nondescript duffel bag. My daughter's upstairs, I whispered, as I let them in. We need to be quick. Pete nodded. He was a professional, no unnecessary questions, no judgment, just efficiency. In 20 minutes, he'd installed 3 cameras, one in a decorative plant on the living room bookshelf that had a direct view of the medication cabinet, one in a smoke detector in the hallway outside Catherine's bedroom, one in a digital clock on Catherine's nightstand. They record to a cloud server, Pete explained in a low voice. You can access the footage from your phone anytime, anywhere. Motion activated, but you can also set them to continuous recording. He showed me the app, how to access the feeds, and how to download footage. This is important, Pete said seriously. If you catch something criminal on these cameras, don't delete anything. Don't edit anything. The timestamp integrity is crucial for evidence. After they left, I sat in my truck again, phone in my hand, watching the live feeds. I could see Catherine in the living room working on a jigsaw puzzle. The house looked peaceful, normal. I felt like a spy in my own home. That evening, Ashley approached me after dinner. Dad, I think you should let me handle Mom's medication again, she said. I notice you've been stressed, and I don't want this to add to your burden. I've got it under control, I replied. But, Ashley, I said firmly, I appreciate your help, but this is something I need to do. Her jaw tightened. For a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw genuine anger flash across her face. Then she recovered, smiled tightly, and walked away. That night, I lay in bed next to Catherine, my phone under my pillow, the camera app running. I was watching, waiting, and 3 days later, I caught her. It happened on a Friday morning. I'd told Ashley the night before that I had an early appointment with my cardiologist, a follow-up from my heart attack 2 years ago. I needed her to handle breakfast and Catherine's morning routine. Of course, Dad, she'd said. Don't worry about anything. But I didn't go to any appointment. I went to Dennis's house, parked my truck in his garage where Ashley wouldn't see it if she drove past, and sat in his kitchen with my phone, watching the camera feeds. Dennis sat next to me, a notepad ready, his old detective instincts fully engaged. At 7:15 a.m., Ashley appeared on the living room camera. She was dressed in yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked like any normal daughter making breakfast for her mother. She prepared oatmeal, cut up fruit, and made tea. Everything looked ordinary. Then she went to the medication cabinet. The plant camera captured everything in crystal clear HD. Ashley opened the cabinet and took out Catherine's pill organizer. She opened the Friday morning compartment and removed the pills. I could see 4 different medications, the exact ones prescribed by Catherine's doctor. Then she reached into her sweatshirt pocket and pulled out a small vial and a syringe. My heart stopped. Recording this? Dennis asked quietly. Yes, I whispered. We watched as Ashley drew clear liquid from the vial into the syringe. Her movements were practiced, confident, not the fumbling of someone doing something unfamiliar. She then took one of Catherine's pills, a large white capsule, and carefully inserted the syringe needle into it. She injected the liquid, withdrew the needle, and placed the pill back in the organizer. The whole process took maybe 30 seconds. She cleaned the needle with a tissue, returned everything to her pocket, and closed the cabinet. Then she picked up the breakfast tray and headed toward Catherine's bedroom, humming softly. Jesus Christ, Dennis breathed. Rob, that's attempted murder. Clear as day. I couldn't speak. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. We watched as Ashley entered Catherine's bedroom. The nightstand camera showed her helping Catherine sit up, fluffing her pillows, setting the breakfast tray across her lap with loving care. Morning, Mom. Ashley's voice came through the phone speaker. How'd you sleep? Catherine's response was groggy, confused. Where am I? You're home, Mom. Safe at home. Here, let's get your medicine in you. Then you'll feel better. Ashley opened the pill organizer and shook the tampered capsule into her palm, along with the other pills. She handed them to Catherine with a glass of water. No, I said aloud, standing up from Dennis's table. Rob, you can't stop it now. Dennis grabbed my arm. If you burst in there, she'll know you're onto her. She'll destroy evidence. She'll lawyer up immediately. We need to let this play out so we have irrefutable proof. That's my wife swallowing poison. That's your wife swallowing what's probably a dose of insulin that will make her sick but not kill her, Dennis said firmly. Ashley's been doing this for months, right? She knows exactly how much to give to create symptoms without causing immediate death. She's calibrated it. If we stop it now, we won't have a complete case. Every instinct in my body screamed to run home, to stop this, to protect Catherine. But Dennis was right. If I acted now, Ashley would claim the syringe was for something else. The vial was medication that spilled, and she was trying to salvage it. The whole thing was a misunderstanding. She'd walk free, and then she'd be more careful, more hidden, and eventually, she'd succeed. So I watched. I watched my daughter feed poisoned medication to my wife. I watched Catherine swallow those pills with trembling hands. I watched Ashley tuck the blanket around her mother with tender care, kiss her forehead, whisper, "I love you, Mom." And then I watched her leave the room with a small, satisfied smile. I felt bile rise in my throat. "We need to get Catherine to a hospital," I said. "Right now." "Agreed," Dennis said, already grabbing his jacket. "But we need to be smart about this. If Ashley knows we're onto her, she could run, destroy evidence, create an alternative narrative. We need law enforcement involved immediately." He called a contact at the Pittsburgh Police Department, a detective in the major crimes unit he'd worked with for years. Explained the situation in cop shorthand. Within minutes, we had a plan. I would return home, back from my appointment, and find Catherine in distress. I would call 911. The responding paramedics would be briefed to look for signs of insulin overdose. The hospital would run a full toxicology screen. The police would be waiting, and Ashley would have no idea we'd caught her. I drove home with Dennis following in his car at a distance. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. It was 8:30 a.m., about 75 minutes since Catherine had swallowed that pill. I parked in the driveway and walked into my house with my heart hammering. Ashley was in the kitchen, washing dishes, NPR playing softly on her phone. "Hey, Dad," she called out cheerfully. "How was the appointment?" "Fine. Everything's fine." "Where's Mom?" "Still resting. She had a rough morning. Very confused. I gave her the medication, but she's having one of her bad days." One of her bad days. Created by you, I thought, but kept my expression neutral. "I'll go check on her," I said. I walked to our bedroom, opened the door, and felt my heart shatter. Catherine was curled on her side, shaking violently. Her skin was clammy, pale, covered in sweat. Her eyes were half open but unfocused, rolling back slightly. "Catherine." I rushed to her side. Her pulse was rapid and weak. This wasn't like the other times. This was worse. Much worse. Had Ashley miscalculated the dose? Had she decided today was the day to finish it? "Ashley," I shouted. "Call 911. Something's wrong with your mother." Ashley appeared in the doorway, and I swear to God, for just a fraction of a second, I saw satisfaction in her eyes before concern took over. "Oh my God, what happened?" "Just call them," I snapped. She dialed, gave our address, described symptoms. To anyone listening, she sounded like a panicked, loving daughter. The ambulance arrived within 8 minutes. Paramedics rushed in, assessed Catherine, and checked her blood sugar. "It's extremely low," one of them said. "Did she take insulin this morning?" "She's not diabetic," I said firmly. The paramedics exchanged glances. "We need to get her to the hospital immediately," the lead paramedic said. They loaded Catherine onto a stretcher. As they wheeled her out, Ashley grabbed my hand. "Dad, I'm so scared," she said, tears in her eyes. "What if we lose her?" I looked at my daughter, at her perfectly performed anguish, at the tears that seemed so real. "Get your purse," I said coldly. "You're riding with me." At the hospital, they rushed Catherine into emergency treatment. They started an IV with dextrose to counteract the hypoglycemia. They ran blood tests, tox screens, and the full battery. Ashley and I sat in the waiting room. She kept reaching for my hand. I kept moving it away. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked. "You seem angry." "I'm worried about your mother," I said flatly. 2 hours later, a doctor emerged with a grim expression. "Mr. Patterson, your wife has severe hypoglycemia caused by insulin, but she's not diabetic, according to her medical records." "That's correct," I said. "Can you think of any reason she would have been exposed to insulin?" Before I could answer, 2 people in plain clothes approached. "Detectives." "Mr. Patterson?" "I'm Detective Williams. This is Detective Cruz. We'd like to ask you and your daughter some questions about your wife's condition." Ashley's face went pale, and that's when her mask finally, completely cracked. I want to pause here for a moment, because what happens next changed everything. But before we continue, I need to know you're really listening. I need to know this story is reaching people who might recognize these warning signs in their own lives. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Click that notification bell. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever had someone in your life who seemed helpful, loving, perfect, but something in your gut told you differently? Share your story. You might help someone else recognize danger before it's too late. Now, let me tell you about the interrogation that exposed 3 months of calculated murder. The hospital had a small consultation room, one of those sterile spaces with uncomfortable chairs and fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look slightly ill. Detective Williams gestured for Ashley and me to follow them inside. "Is my mother going to be okay?" Ashley asked, her voice trembling. "Nobody's telling us anything. The doctors are taking excellent care of her," Detective Cruz said. She was a woman in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and a kind face. "But we need to understand what happened this morning." "I don't understand either," Ashley said, sitting down and wrapping her arms around herself. "She was fine when I gave her breakfast." "What time was that?" Williams asked. He was taking notes. "Around 7:30, maybe 7:45. "And what did you give her?" "Oatmeal, fruit, tea, her regular medications." "Can you list those medications?" Ashley rattled off the names, all legitimate prescriptions from Catherine's neurologist. She sounded knowledgeable, competent. "And nothing else?" Cruz pressed. "Nothing else," Ashley said firmly. I sat silent, watching this performance. Part of me wanted to scream that she was lying, to show them the video right then and there. But Dennis's words echoed in my head. Let them work. Let her dig her own grave. "Mr. Patterson," Williams turned to me. "You weren't home this morning?" "I had a doctor's appointment. Cardiology follow-up." "What time did you leave?" "Around 6:30. "And when did you return?" 8:30, maybe 8:40. "What did you find when you got home?" My wife was in severe distress, shaking, sweating, unresponsive. I called for Ashley, and she dialed 911. Williams nodded, writing, "How long has your daughter been living with you?" 3 months. She moved in to help care for Catherine. "And how has that been going?" I chose my words carefully. "My wife has good days and bad days. Dementia is unpredictable. Has she ever had an episode like this before?" "Not this severe." Ashley jumped in. "Dad, what are they asking? Do they think someone did this to Mom on purpose?" Beautiful performance. The innocent daughter, confused and scared. Cruz leaned forward. "Ashley, we're just trying to understand all the facts. Is there any reason your mother would have access to insulin?" "No. She's not diabetic. She's never been diabetic. So you can't think of any way insulin could have gotten into her system?" No. Unless." Ashley's eyes widened. Oh my God. Could someone have broken in? Could someone have poisoned her? I almost laughed at the audacity. She was trying to introduce an alternative theory, an outside intruder. Your home shows no signs of forced entry, Williams said. Your father's security system wasn't triggered. Security system? I'd never mentioned we had cameras. Ashley's face flickered with confusion. Security system? Dad, I didn't know you had. We installed it a few years ago, I interrupted. After the break-ins on Maple Street. That was a lie. We'd never had a security system before Dennis's guy installed those cameras 4 days ago. But Ashley didn't know that. Mr. Patterson, Cruz said, would you be willing to provide us with footage from your security cameras? It might show us if anyone entered your home this morning. Of course, I said. Anything to help find out what happened to my wife. Ashley's hand went to her throat, a small, unconscious gesture of panic. That won't be necessary, she said quickly. I was home all morning. Nobody came in. The cameras would just show me taking care of Mom. Still, William said, we'd like to review the footage. Standard procedure. Dad, you don't have to give them anything without a warrant, Ashley said, her voice taking on an edge. This is our private home. Ashley, I said quietly, if the cameras can help us understand what happened to your mother, why wouldn't we share them? She stared at me. I watched the calculation happening behind her eyes. If she protested too much, she'd look guilty. But if she stayed silent, those cameras would destroy her. Fine, she said finally. Whatever helps, Mom. Detective Cruz stood. Mr. Patterson, would you come with me to access that footage? Ashley, you can wait here. I want to stay with my dad, Ashley said quickly. This will just take a moment, Cruz said firmly. Detective Williams will keep you company. It wasn't a request. I followed Cruz into the hallway. As soon as we were out of earshot, she turned to me. You already know what's on those cameras, don't you? I looked at her, really looked at her. She had the eyes of someone who'd seen terrible things and learned to recognize truth when it appeared. Yes, I said simply. Is it bad? It's murder. Attempted murder. Cruz nodded slowly. Send the footage to this email. She handed me a card. All of it. And don't go back in that room with your daughter alone. You think she's dangerous? Mr. Patterson, if what you're telling me is true, your daughter has been slowly poisoning her own mother for months. People capable of that are capable of anything when cornered. I pulled out my phone and sent the video files, all of them. The footage from this morning, the files from the past 4 days showing the pattern, everything. Cruz watched her phone as the files came through. She opened the morning footage, watched for 30 seconds, and her expression hardened. Jesus, she muttered. This is premeditated. Yes. Do you know why? Why would she do this? I thought about that question. I'd been thinking about it for days. Money, maybe? Catherine and I have some savings, the house. Ashley's been divorced twice. Probably has debts. She's the beneficiary on Catherine's life insurance, along with our other kids. If Catherine died, if I was too grief-stricken to manage things. I trailed off, the full picture becoming clear. She could control everything. Cruz's jaw tightened. We're going to arrest her. Right now. But I need you to stay calm. Stay quiet. Let us handle this professionally. We walked back to the consultation room. Williams was asking Ashley casual questions about her job, her living situation. She was answering with forced cheerfulness, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Ashley Patterson, Cruz said formally. Stand up, please. Ashley stood, confusion crossing her face. What? You're under arrest for the attempted murder of Catherine Patterson. The color drained from Ashley's face. What? You have the right to remain silent, Williams continued, moving behind her with handcuffs. Dad. Ashley's eyes locked on mine, wild with panic and rage. You did this. You set me up. You. The mask was gone, completely gone. What remained was something I didn't recognize, something twisted and desperate and furious. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, Cruz continued. As Williams cuffed her wrists, Ashley lunged toward me. She was going to die anyway. The dementia was going to kill her. I was just speeding it up. I was helping. You have the right to an attorney. I'm your daughter, Ashley screamed. I looked at her, really looked at the person I'd raised, loved, trusted. How could I said quietly. You tried to murder my wife. You tried to murder your mother. The question isn't, how could I? It's how could you? They led her away, still screaming, still protesting. I stood in that empty consultation room for a long moment, my legs trembling. My heart shattered into pieces I wasn't sure could ever be put back together. Then I went to find my wife. Catherine spent 3 days in the ICU. The doctor said she was lucky. Another hour without treatment, and the insulin overdose could have caused permanent brain damage or death. Lucky. That's the word they used. I sat by her hospital bed watching IV fluids drip into her arm, watching monitors track her heartbeat, and thought about how nothing about this situation felt lucky. She was conscious, but confused. The dementia made it hard for her to understand where she was or what had happened. Sometimes she recognized me. Sometimes she called me by her father's name. Sometimes she just stared at the ceiling with empty eyes. Is she awake? Dennis asked, appearing in the doorway with 2 cups of terrible hospital coffee. In and out, I said. The doctors say the insulin crash might have made the dementia symptoms worse temporarily. They're hoping she'll stabilize. Dennis handed me a coffee and sat in the chair next to mine. The police have been thorough. They searched your house, found the insulin vials, the syringes, everything. Ashley had them hidden in a locked box under her bed. They also found her laptop. And research. Months of it. How much insulin it takes to make someone sick. How much to kill someone. Symptoms of insulin poisoning. How to get prescription medication without a valid prescription. She even had a spreadsheet, Rob. A goddamn spreadsheet tracking Catherine's bad days and her own dosing schedule. I closed my eyes. She planned this for months. Looks like it started even before she moved in. They found emails between Ashley and a guy she was dating. Some pharmaceutical rep. She was asking him questions about insulin, playing it off like she was curious for work. He had access to medication samples. Did they arrest him too? He's cooperating. Says he had no idea what she was planning. Thought she was just being thorough for her job. He might face charges for improper distribution of controlled substances, but the DA doesn't think he was part of the murder plot. Murder plot. Those words hung in the air between us. What happens now? I asked. She's been formally charged with attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, and a few other charges the DA's still adding. She's being held without bail. Judge considered her a flight risk and a danger to Catherine. Has she said anything? Dennis shifted uncomfortably. She's claiming diminished capacity. Says she was under extreme stress. That she had a psychological break. Her lawyer's going to argue she wasn't in her right mind. That's bullshit. You saw the evidence, the planning, the research, the spreadsheet. I know, Rob. I know. But it's her only play. The evidence is overwhelming. So they're going to attack her mental state at the time. It probably won't work, but they have to try something. I looked at Catherine, sleeping fitfully. Her hand twitched under the blanket. She wanted her mother dead, I said quietly. Her own mother. For what? Money? Convenience? Because caring for someone with dementia was too hard? The detectives found financial records too, Dennis said. Ashley's in serious debt. 2 divorces, credit cards maxed out, personal loans she can't pay back. Catherine's life insurance policy is substantial, $500,000. Split 3 ways between you kids, but Ashley was counting on you being too grief-stricken to manage it. She could have been the one handling everything. She underestimated how much I love my wife. Most criminals do, Dennis said. They can't imagine someone loving another person more than they love themselves. Over the next few days, the full scope of Ashley's plan became clear through police investigation and prosecution preparation. She'd been researching for nearly 6 months, long before she moved in with us. She'd cultivated the relationship with the pharmaceutical rep specifically to gain access to insulin samples. She'd studied Catherine's dementia progression to time her attack when the symptoms would be most easily disguised. When she moved in, she immediately took over Catherine's medication management, not to help, but to control. She'd been giving small doses of insulin for weeks, calibrating the amount needed to create bad days without killing Catherine outright. Why not just give a lethal dose immediately? Because that would be suspicious. A sudden death might trigger an autopsy, toxicology tests, questions, but a slow decline? That's just dementia running its course. Catherine would get weaker, more confused, more dependent. Eventually, Ashley would increase the dosages until Catherine slipped into a diabetic coma. The death would be attributed to complications from dementia. No one would question it, except she didn't count on me noticing the pattern. She didn't count on finding that insulin bottle. She didn't count on me installing cameras. The stain on her sleeve that Tuesday evening, the one I mentioned at the beginning, that was from the syringe. She'd injected the insulin into Catherine's pills so carelessly that morning that some had leaked onto her sweatshirt sleeve. It was still slightly damp when I got home early and found Catherine in distress. That stain was evidence. The police took the sweatshirt, tested it. Traces of Humalog insulin, Catherine's DNA from the pill capsule, physical proof. Ashley had been so confident, so careful in her planning. But she'd made one small mistake. She'd gotten sloppy. And that sloppiness saved my wife's life. On day 4, Catherine woke up more lucid than she'd been in weeks. "Robert," she said, her voice weak but clear. I jumped up from my chair. "I'm here. I'm right here." "Where am I?" "You're in the hospital. You've been sick, but you're getting better." She looked around the room, processing. "How long?" "4 days." Her hand found mine. Her grip was weak, but deliberate. "Ashley," she whispered. My heart clenched. What about Ashley? She was hurting me. Wasn't she? Tears burned my eyes. Through all the confusion, through the dementia fog, some part of Catherine had known, had tried to tell me. "Yes," I said, "but she can't anymore. She can never hurt you again." Catherine closed her eyes. A single tear ran down her cheek. "My baby girl." "I know," I whispered. "I know." We sat in silence for a long time, her hand in mine, the monitors beeping steadily, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. "I tried to tell you," she said finally. "That day you came home early, I tried. You did tell me. When you whispered, 'Don't let her give me any more medicine,' you saved yourself, Catherine." She opened her eyes and looked at me with such profound sadness that it broke something inside me that I didn't know could still break. "We made her," she said. "We raised her. Where did we go wrong?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I've been asking myself that same question for days. I don't have an answer. Do you think she loved me? Even a little?" I thought about Ashley's tears at the hospital, her performance of grief and concern. I thought about her screaming, "I'm your daughter," as they arrested her. "I think she loved herself more," I said. And I think when people love themselves more than they love anyone else, they become capable of terrible things. Catherine squeezed my hand. "I'm tired." "Then rest. I'm not going anywhere." She smiled faintly. "You never do." I watched her drift back to sleep, and I made a silent promise. Whatever happened next, trial, testimony, media attention, family fracturing, I would protect this woman with everything I had left. Because that's what love is. Not the easy moments of joy and laughter, but the hard moments. The hospital rooms, the betrayals, the staying when everything says to run. Love is choosing someone over and over again, even when that choice costs you everything. I need to stop here and take a breath, because what I'm about to tell you next is going to be difficult. The trial, the testimony. The moment I had to look my daughter in the eye and tell the truth that would put her in prison. It tested every part of me. But before we get there, I need something from you. If this story is affecting you, if you're thinking about your own family, your own trust, your own vulnerabilities, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment telling me what you're feeling right now. Tell me if you've ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and protecting someone else you love. Your comments, your stories, they matter. They remind me that sharing this pain might prevent someone else from experiencing it. Now, let me tell you about the hardest day of my life, the day I testified against my own daughter. The trial began on a cold February morning, 5 months after Ashley's arrest. Catherine was stronger by then, stable enough to be released from the hospital after 2 weeks, though she'd never fully recovered her cognitive function. The insulin overdose, combined with her existing dementia, had created permanent damage. She required round-the-clock care now. Jennifer, our youngest, had taken a leave of absence from medical school to move back home and help. Thomas flew in from Seattle with his wife. The three of us, the siblings, hadn't been in the same room since Ashley's arrest. The family had fractured in ways I never imagined possible. "You set her up," Thomas said to me the night before the trial. We were in my living room, the same room where I'd found Catherine collapsed months ago. "You installed cameras to catch your own daughter." "I installed cameras to find out the truth," I replied. "You could have confronted her. You could have given her a chance to explain." "Explain poisoning her mother? We don't know that's what happened. We only know what you say happened." I stared at my son. He was 40 years old, a software engineer, supposedly intelligent, and he was choosing to believe a narrative that made no sense because the alternative, accepting that his sister was a would-be murderer, was too painful. "Thomas," Jennifer interjected, "the evidence is overwhelming. The video, the insulin vials, the research on her computer. Evidence that Dad provided," Thomas shot back. "Evidence that could have been manipulated." "You think I'm lying about this?" I asked quietly. "I think you're an old man whose wife has dementia and who needed someone to blame." The words hit like physical blows. "Get out," I said. "Dad, get out of my house. Now." Thomas left. I haven't spoken to him since. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. I'd seen trials on TV, grand spaces with high ceilings and dramatic lighting. This was just a regular room in the Allegheny County Courthouse, fluorescent lights and worn carpeting. Ashley sat at the defense table in a navy blue dress, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. Her lawyer had dressed her to look innocent, vulnerable, young. She didn't look at me when I entered. Didn't acknowledge Catherine sitting in her wheelchair in the gallery, Jennifer beside her. The prosecution called me as their first witness. I walked to the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor was a woman named Rebecca Thornton, mid-30s, sharp as a knife, with a reputation for never losing elder abuse cases. "Mr. Patterson," she began, "can you tell us about your relationship with the defendant?" "She's my daughter," I said. My voice sounded strange in the formal space. "My middle child. And before September of last year, how would you describe your relationship?" "Good. Close. I trusted her." "When did that trust begin to change?" I told them everything. The insulin bottle. The pattern of good and bad days. The decision to install cameras. The video footage of Ashley injecting insulin into Catherine's medication. Thornton played the video for the jury. I watched them as they watched my daughter commit attempted murder in high definition. Several jurors looked sick. One woman brought her hand to her mouth. Ashley's lawyer objected repeatedly. Chain of custody. Authentication issues. Prejudicial. But the judge overruled each objection. The video was clear, time-stamped, authentic. "Mr. Patterson," Thornton said, "during the time your daughter lived with you, did she have unrestricted access to your wife?" "Yes." "Did you ever see her physically harm your wife?" "Not until I reviewed the camera footage." "And what did you see in that footage?" I described it clinically, without emotion. The syringe, the injection, the careful replacement of the tampered pill. "What went through your mind when you saw that video?" I looked at Ashley then. She was staring at the table, her jaw tight. I thought," I said slowly, "that I didn't know the person I was looking at. My daughter wouldn't do this. But the woman in that video, she was capable of murder." The defense's turn came after lunch. Ashley's lawyer, A slick guy named Richard Brennan, who wore expensive suits and smiled too much, approached me with practiced sympathy. "Mr. Patterson, you love your daughter, don't you?" "I did," I answered. "You did?" Past tense? "I love who I thought she was. I don't know who she actually is." "That must be very confusing for you." "Objection," Thornton said. "Is there a question?" "Mr. Patterson," Brennan continued, "isn't it true that you've been under enormous stress caring for your wife?" "Yes." "And isn't it possible that stress has affected your judgment?" "No." "You're certain?" "Because the medical records show that you've been prescribed anti-anxiety medication, sleep aids. My medication doesn't change what's on that video. But it might change how you interpreted your daughter's actions. You saw her helping your wife with medication, and your stressed, anxious mind turned it into something sinister." I leaned forward. "I saw her inject insulin into a pill meant for a non-diabetic woman. There's no interpretation needed." Brennan smiled. "The video shows someone using a syringe, yes. But Ashley has testified that she was adding liquid vitamin supplements to your wife's medication at the recommendation of a naturopath." "Did you know your wife was seeing a naturopath?" I felt ice run down my spine. This was new. "No," I admitted. "So, there are things about your wife's care that you didn't know. Things your daughter handled that you weren't aware of." "Liquid vitamins don't cause insulin poisoning." "The hospital found traces of insulin in your wife's system," Brennan agreed. "But couldn't that insulin have come from somewhere else? Couldn't it have been administered by someone else? Perhaps even accidentally by medical staff during a previous hospital visit?" It was a reach. A desperate defense theory. But I saw one juror nod slightly. "My daughter researched insulin poisoning for months," I said firmly. "She had vials hidden in her room. She had a spreadsheet tracking dosages. That's not vitamins. That's premeditated murder." "Objection," Brennan shouted. "The witness is not qualified to make legal conclusions." "Sustained," the judge said. "Mr. Patterson, please stick to facts you personally witnessed." Brennan smiled like he'd won something. The cross-examination continued for another hour. He picked at every detail. "Why didn't you confront Ashley immediately? Why did you feel the need to spy on your daughter? Isn't it possible you misunderstood what you saw?" But the video didn't lie. The evidence didn't lie. When I finally stepped down from the stand, I was exhausted. Drained. I looked at Ashley one more time. She was crying silently, tissues pressed to her face. For the jury's benefit, I knew. All performances, but for just a second, our eyes met, and I saw something there that made my blood run cold. Not remorse, not shame. Hatred. Pure, undiluted hatred. The trial lasted 3 weeks. They called expert witnesses on insulin, on elder abuse, on dementia. They called the pharmaceutical rep who'd given Ashley the medication. They called Dennis, who testified about finding the evidence in Ashley's room. Catherine was too impaired to testify, which the defense tried to use against the prosecution. "The alleged victim can't even tell us what happened," Brennan argued. But the evidence spoke for her. On March 15th, the jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood and read the verdict. "On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty." Ashley collapsed. Her lawyer caught her. "On the count of elder abuse, we find the defendant guilty." Catherine, sitting next to me, squeezed my hand. "On the count of fraud, we find the defendant guilty." The judge continued through all 11 counts. Guilty on every single one. Sentencing was set for 6 weeks later. As they led Ashley away, she turned and screamed at me. "I hope you're happy. I hope destroying your daughter makes you feel like a big man." Jennifer started crying. I sat frozen. The courtroom cleared slowly. People avoided eye contact with me, the father who'd sent his own daughter to prison. But as Catherine and I left the building, she looked up at me from her wheelchair. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing me, for saving me." And I knew, despite everything, that I'd made the right choice. Sentencing day was April 28th. Spring had arrived in Pittsburgh, trees blooming, temperature warming, the world continuing its relentless forward motion despite personal tragedies. I dressed carefully that morning. The same navy suit I'd worn to my father's funeral, a burgundy tie Catherine had bought me years ago. Jennifer helped Catherine into a simple blue dress. We didn't speak much. What was there to say? At the courthouse, Thomas was waiting outside. I hadn't expected to see him. We'd had no contact since our argument 5 months earlier. "Dad," he said as we approached. I stopped the wheelchair. "Thomas. I came to—" He struggled for words. "I came to see Ashley sentenced." "Why?" He looked at his feet. "Because I was wrong. About everything. I read the trial transcripts. I saw the evidence. I talked to Jennifer." He raised his eyes to mine. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to hold on to my anger. God knows I'd earned the right. But looking at my son, at his genuine remorse, his pain, I couldn't." "You're here now," I said. "That's what matters." Inside the courtroom, Ashley was already seated. She'd lost weight during the trial. Her face was gaunt, hair stringy despite obvious attempts to style it. Prison was not kind. Judge Elizabeth Morrison presided, a stern woman in her 60s with a reputation for harsh sentencing in elder abuse cases. "Miss Patterson," she began once everyone was settled, "you've been found guilty of attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, and multiple related charges. Before I impose a sentence, does the prosecution wish to make a statement?" Rebecca Thornton stood. "Your Honor, the people recommend the maximum sentence allowable by law. This was not a crime of passion or impulse. This was calculated, premeditated, cruel. The defendant spent months planning how to murder her own mother in the slowest, most painful way possible. She researched, she practiced, she calibrated her dosages to maximize suffering while minimizing detection. This is a level of depravity that demands the harshest possible punishment." "The defense?" Brennan stood. "Your Honor, my client is a first-time offender who made terrible choices while under extreme psychological duress. She'd suffered 2 divorces, financial hardship, and the trauma of watching her mother decline from dementia. We ask the court for leniency." "Leniency?" Judge Morrison interrupted. "Mr. Brennan, your client attempted to murder a 61-year-old woman with dementia who couldn't defend herself. What leniency did she show her victim?" Brennan sat down. "Does the defendant wish to make a statement?" Ashley stood slowly. She'd been coached. Clearly, her posture was submissive, her expression contrite. "Your Honor," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt people. I hurt my mother, my father, my family. I wish I could take it back. I wish I could explain why I did what I did. But I don't even understand it myself. All I can say is, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She turned to look at Catherine. "Mom, I'm sorry. I love you. I never wanted to hurt you." Catherine stared back with empty eyes. The words meant nothing to her, lost in the fog of her damaged mind. Ashley's gaze shifted to me. "Dad, I'm sorry for disappointing you, for destroying our family. I hope someday you can forgive me." I said nothing. I'd heard enough of her lies. Judge Morrison let the silence hang for a moment. Then, "Miss Patterson, I've presided over hundreds of cases in my 20 years on the bench. I've seen crimes born of poverty, desperation, addiction, mental illness. I've seen people do terrible things for understandable, if not forgivable reasons." She paused. "This is not one of those cases. You didn't hurt your mother because you were desperate or ill. You hurt her because it was convenient. Because murdering her was easier than caring for her. Because her life insurance and your potential inheritance were worth more to you than her life." Ashley's lawyer put a hand on her arm, but she jerked away. "Your mother taught children for 35 years, Morrison continued. "She shaped young minds, inspired students, and gave her life to education. And when she became vulnerable, when she needed care and protection, her own daughter chose to end her life for money." The judge's voice hardened. "I see no remorse in you. I see only regret that you were caught. Therefore, it is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to 25 years to life in state prison, with no possibility of parole for 20 years. Ashley gasped. No. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution for all medical costs incurred by the victim, and you are permanently barred from any inheritance or financial benefit from Catherine Patterson's estate. Your Honor, please, you will be remanded to state custody immediately. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through the room. Ashley turned to me, her mask completely gone. "This is your fault," she screamed as bailiffs moved toward her. "You did this. You ruined my life. You ruined your own life," I said quietly. "I was helping her. She was suffering." "I was. You were killing her," I interrupted. "For money. Own it." They dragged her away, still screaming, still blaming. Catherine tugged on my sleeve. "Who was that angry woman?" My throat tightened. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Cameras, microphones, questions shouted from all directions. "Mr. Patterson, how do you feel about your daughter's sentence? Do you believe justice was served? Will you maintain any relationship with Ashley?" Jennifer pushed Catherine's wheelchair toward our car, while Thomas ran interference with the press. I stopped long enough to make one statement. My daughter made choices that destroyed our family. She hurt the woman I love. The sentence she received is the consequence of those choices. I hope other families can learn from this tragedy. Trust must be earned, and vigilance is not the same as paranoia. Protect your vulnerable loved ones, always. Then we left. That night, back at home, the three of us, Thomas, Jennifer, and I, sat around the kitchen table. Catherine was in bed, exhausted from the day. "What happens now?" Jennifer asked. "We rebuild," I said. "We take care of your mother. We try to find some kind of normal." "Will you visit Ashley in prison?" Thomas asked. I'd been thinking about that question for weeks. "No," I said finally. "Not until she genuinely understands what she did. Not until she takes real responsibility. Maybe never." "She's still your daughter," Thomas said. "She tried to murder your mother," I replied. "There are some lines that, once crossed, can't be uncrossed." We sat in silence for a while. "I keep thinking about when she was little," Jennifer said softly. "Remember when she was 7 and she found that injured bird? She cried for hours when it died. She made us have a funeral for it in the backyard." "I remember," I said. "What happened to that girl?" Jennifer asked. "The one who cried over a bird?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe she was never really that person. Maybe we only saw what we wanted to see. Or maybe people change. Maybe cruelty isn't something you're born with. It's something you choose. Little by little. Decision by decision. Until one day, you're capable of things you never imagined. I'll never have those answers. All I know is this. I saved my wife's life. I did what needed to be done. And I'll live with the consequences of that choice for the rest of my days. We're almost at the end now. But before we get there, I want to hear from you one more time. Has this story changed how you think about trust? About family? About the people you allow to care for your vulnerable loved ones? Drop a comment. Share your thoughts. Tell me what you're taking away from this. Subscribe if you haven't already. These stories need to be heard. Now, let me tell you about what life looks like 6 months later. 6 months after the sentencing, I sat on our back porch watching Catherine work in the garden with Jennifer's help. She plants tomatoes without remembering she planted the same spot yesterday. She pulls weeds, smiles at butterflies, hums songs whose words she's forgotten. The dementia has progressed. She rarely knows what year it is. Sometimes doesn't recognize Thomas when he visits from Seattle. But she's alive. She's here, in the sunshine, with dirt under her fingernails and a peaceful expression on her face. That's more than I would have if I hadn't noticed that pattern. If I hadn't found that insulin bottle. If I hadn't installed those cameras. The house feels different now. Quieter. Ashley's bedroom remains closed. I haven't been able to go through her things yet. Maybe someday. maybe never. Jennifer moved back permanently. She deferred medical school to care for her mother full-time. It's a sacrifice she insisted on making. I'll go back eventually, she tells me. But right now, Mom needs me. And honestly, Dad, so do you. She's right. I need her steady presence, her medical knowledge, her unwavering support. Thomas calls weekly, visits monthly. Our relationship is healing, slowly. We never mention Ashley unless necessary. I've thought a lot about warning signs, about what I missed and when I should have known. The truth is, the signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. Ashley's excessive attention to Catherine's medication, her insistence on being present at doctor visits, her subtle encouragement of my exhaustion. Dad, you look so tired. Let me handle this. The way she'd steer conversations away from Catherine's good days, always emphasizing the bad. The phone calls she'd taken private, the laptop she kept password protected, the way she'd delete her browser history daily. Small things, individually meaningless, together, a pattern. I've learned to trust my instincts. That voice that whispers, something's wrong, even when you can't articulate why. That voice is worth listening to. Last month, I received a letter from Ashley, her first contact since the sentencing. It sat on my kitchen table for 3 days before I opened it. Dear Dad, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I need you to understand something. I never stopped loving Mom. I couldn't handle watching her disappear anymore. Every day she forgot more, needed more, became less of the person she was. It was like watching her die in slow motion. I know that doesn't excuse what I did. Nothing excuses it. But I want you to know it wasn't about money. Not really. It was about ending her suffering. The dementia was killing her anyway. I just wanted to control the when and the how. I wanted to spare her the worst parts, the eventual inability to recognize anyone, to feed herself, to maintain any dignity. I was wrong. I understand that now. But please believe me when I say I never wanted to hurt her. I wanted to save her. Can you ever forgive me? Ashley. I read the letter 3 times. Then I wrote back, Ashley, euthanasia performed out of mercy requires consent. It requires the person choosing to end their suffering. You didn't give Mom that choice. You made the decision for her because it was convenient for you, not because it was what she wanted. If you truly wanted to end her suffering, you could have researched quality hospice care, discussed end-of-life wishes with the family, supported her through the disease with compassion. Instead, you researched how much poison it takes to kill someone while making it look like natural causes. Don't rewrite history now that you're facing consequences. Don't pretend this was mercy when the evidence shows it was murder. Until you can own the full truth of what you did, all of it, without justification or excuse, I have nothing to say to you. Robert. I mailed it the same day. I don't know if she'll respond. I don't know if I want her to. Some wounds don't heal. They just scar over, and you learn to live with the permanent ache. Jennifer found me on the porch one evening, staring at nothing. You okay, Dad? I was thinking about a conversation I had with Ashley when she was 16. I said. She'd failed a chemistry test. Her first failing grade ever. She was devastated. I told her that failure teaches us more than success. That making mistakes is how we grow. That's good advice, Jennifer said. Is it? Because I think Ashley learned the wrong lesson. I think she learned that failure was unacceptable, that she had to succeed at any cost, even if that cost her mother's life. Jennifer sat beside me. You can't blame yourself for how she twisted your words. Can't I? I'm her father. I shaped who she became. No, Jennifer said firmly. You gave her guidance. She chose what to do with it. Just like Thomas chose to trust her blindly until he couldn't anymore. Just like I chose to pursue medicine so I could help people. We all had the same parents, Dad. We all made different choices. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing doesn't always heal. Catherine appeared in the doorway, confused. Excuse me, she said politely to Jennifer and me. Do you know when my husband will be home? My heart broke, as it did every time she failed to recognize me. I'm right here, honey, I said gently. She looked at me, squinting. Robert? Yes, it's me. She smiled, that beautiful, genuine smile. Oh, good. I was worried you'd left me. Never, I said. I'll never leave you. And I meant it. Whatever time we have left. Whether she knows me or not, whether she can speak or not, whether the disease takes everything else, I'll be here. Because that's what love is. Not the easy moments, but the hard ones. Not the celebrations, but the vigils. Not the joy, but the staying. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. I know it's not easy to hear. Hell, it wasn't easy to live through. But I'm sharing it because somewhere out there, someone might be experiencing the same warning signs I ignored for too long. Someone might have a family member who's just a little too eager to handle medications. Someone might notice that their loved one only gets worse when specific people are around. Someone might find a prescription that doesn't make sense. And if my story helps even one person recognize those signs before it's too late, then sharing this pain will have been worth it. Here's what I learned that I want you to remember. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let guilt or family loyalty silence that inner voice that's trying to protect you. Document everything. I kept a journal of Catherine's symptoms. That journal revealed the pattern that saved her life. Write things down. Take photos. Create a record. Verify independently. Don't just trust that medications are being administered correctly. Check prescriptions yourself. Call doctors yourself. Be involved in medical care even when others offer to handle it. Don't ignore financial red flags. Ashley was in debt. That should have made me more cautious about her sudden interest in helping. Money motivates murder more often than we want to believe. Technology can save lives. Those cameras were the difference between life and death for Catherine. If you're concerned about vulnerable family members, consider surveillance. Yes, it feels invasive, but it's better than a funeral. Family doesn't mean safety. This is the hardest truth. We want to believe that our children, our siblings, and our parents would never hurt us. But family members commit elder abuse more often than strangers. Love doesn't automatically equal trustworthiness. Legal intervention is not betrayal. I struggled with calling the police on my own daughter. It felt like the ultimate betrayal. But protecting an abuse victim is never wrong, even when the abuser is someone you love. Catherine is still here because I chose to see the truth instead of the comfortable lie. Ashley is in prison because she chose convenience over compassion. And I'm sharing this story because silence protects predators, not victims. If you're caring for an elderly parent, a sick spouse, anyone vulnerable, be vigilant. Ask questions. Stay involved. Don't outsource their safety completely, no matter how trustworthy the caregiver seems. If you suspect abuse, document it. Report it. Protect the victim. You might be wrong, and if you are, you can apologize. But if you're right and you stay silent, you become complicit. If you're the one feeling overwhelmed, caring for a loved one, ask for help through legitimate channels. Respite care, support groups, therapy, home health aides. There are resources. Feeling exhausted doesn't make you a bad person. Acting on dark impulses does. I don't know what the future holds for our family. Catherine's dementia will progress. Eventually, I'll lose her completely to this disease. But when that day comes, it will be the disease that takes her, not poison administered by someone she trusted. Jennifer will finish medical school someday. Thomas and I are rebuilding our relationship. And Ashley will serve her sentence. Maybe she'll emerge from prison genuinely changed. Maybe she won't. That's not my burden to carry anymore. My burden is loving Catherine through her final years, however long that is. My burden is living with the knowledge that my own daughter was capable of murder. My burden is choosing every single day to believe that I did the right thing, even when it destroyed my family. This is Robert Patterson, and this is my story. If it moved you, if it taught you something, If it made you think differently about the people you trust with your loved ones, please subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment telling me where you're from and whether this story changed your perspective. Your engagement helps YouTube show these stories to people who need them. Share this video with someone who's caring for a vulnerable family member. It might save a life. And if you're going through something similar, if you're seeing warning signs, if you're questioning someone's intentions, if you're scared but not sure why, please reach out for help. Call Adult Protective Services. Talk to a doctor. Install cameras. Trust yourself. Don't wait until it's too late. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being the kind of person who hears a difficult story and chooses to learn from it instead of looking away. Stay safe. Protect your loved ones. And remember, love means staying vigilant, not staying silent.